In this lesson, you will learn about using a loop. This programming technique is very powerful and useful in many ways. Sometimes it is called iteration, another term for looping. A loop is a powerful control structure in programming that allows a task to be repeated several times, such as outputting a row of 20 stars, or counting from 1 to 20, or inputting from the keyboard 5 numbers. The possibilities are many. Every loop has 4 basic parts that must be included for the loop to work properly and effectively: the start, the check, the action, and the step. The start. This is where the loop begins its process, and only happens once. The process is often managed by a loop control variable, most often an integer that begins at 0. Int x is assigned 0 is a very common start to a loop. The check. This is a Boolean expression, which, while its condition is true for most loop structures, allows the loop process to continue, but stops the process when the condition becomes false. An example of a check expression would be x is less than 10. If the current value of x is less than 10, the loop continues. When the value of x becomes equal to or greater than 10, the loop will stop. The 3 loops being studied in this lesson, the while, do while, and for, all check for true to keep going, stopping when the check is false. The repeat until loop is used in some other programming languages and checks for false to keep going, stopping only when the check is true. The action. This is the task to be repeated inside the loop and can be any number of things. For example, output, or calculate something, read data from the keyboard or a file, or write data to a file. Animation control, by slightly changing the position of an object on the screen each time. The step. The step is generally some incremental process that gradually moves the loop towards its conclusion, finally reaching a stopping condition for the check, false for most loops, thus ending the process and continuing with the rest of the program. If this does not happen, a stopping condition is never reached and the loop never stops. This is called an infinite loop. Not a good thing. The step is most often a mathematical process of adding to or subtracting from the value of a loop control variable, which eventually, hopefully, will reach a value that will cause the check condition to stop the loop. X becomes x plus 1 is a very common step, which increases the value of x by 1. X plus equals 1 is a shortcut for this, as is x plus plus. In Java, there are 3 styles of loops: for, while, do while. All 3 work in similar ways, but have slight differences. There is a 4th style of loop emerging in the late versions of Java called the for each loop, limited in flexibility, but very useful for its intended purpose. This loop style is used primarily to access collections of data from beginning to end, such as arrays, array lists, and so on. Quite likely the most commonly used structure is the for loop, but the while and do while loop structures are sometimes better suited for use in some cases. Think of them as similar tools that work in slightly different ways. The programmer simply chooses the best tool for the job at hand. For now, equal attention will be given to each style of loop, and as you gain experience and insight into the particular characteristics of each, you will become better prepared to decide which is best to use for any particular situation.